Berkeley food cafeterias were not good. Like, I'm going to be honest, they were not good.
Okay.
But the food options off campus, very nice.
Okay.
So the amazing thing about Berkeley, it's not very gentrified. So there, most of the shops, most of the restaurants also, they're all mom and pop stores. So it's also very, not culty, but it's also like, I like this a lot. So there's like an element of care involved. So it's a big school. You will find all sorts of people. You will find people who are extremely academic. You'll find people who are prodigies. You'll find people who are total degenerates. And you'll find people who are also like, in the middle somewhere, right?
Right. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spill the Tea with Aditi. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Nitish Sahni, who is a UC Berkeley alumnus and the founder of Paasa, a YC-backed company that helps people invest in dollar portfolios so that they can save for their overseas education. Welcome, Mr. Nitish. How are you?
All good. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, so you're going to be spilling the tea about UC Berkeley today.
That's correct.
Let's get started. Why don't you just give us a general background of your student life, how you ended up at Berkeley?
Yeah, so I went to school in Gurgaon. I went to Sri Ram School and then went to UC Berkeley, studied electrical engineering, computer science over there. At Berkeley, I was involved in, a fraternity. I was involved in a few clubs. I think my focus was computer science and electrical engineering, computer science.
Got it.
And then after Berkeley, I worked in the US for 1 year and now I've moved back doing my own thing, which is Paasa, helping people invest overseas.
Lovely. All right. So as a high school student, why exactly did you choose Berkeley and how did you determine this fit?
I think it was one of the few colleges I wanted to go to. Shortlisted a few colleges that thought would be a good fit for me. Location was a key driver for me. It was a big factor.
Okay.
So location isn't, I wanted to be near, like I wanted to do something in technology. I wanted to do something in startups. So at least that's what I thought when I was in school. So being in Silicon Valley, being near Silicon Valley is super important. That's why Berkeley was high up there. And then I was making the decision also that, should I go to X college or Y college? I chose Berkeley because of the location.
Got it. So what all colleges did you apply to and which other colleges did you get accepted into?
So got into Duke, Georgia Tech and Berkeley. So those were the three colleges I was choosing between and I got into a string of others as well.
Right.
But I think the big decision was Duke versus Berkeley and Berkeley because of the weather and more so the location.
Got it. Any other considerations beyond Silicon Valley that fed into, Berkeley being your top choice?
I think there's this whole debate, right? Like, should you go for prestige or should you go for the major? So I think the decision I made was tipping more towards the major. It's very hard for me to say if that was the right decision or not because I have friends who did CS at Duke also in my year who are doing exceptionally well. So it's all hindsight bias, but I think Berkeley was great for me.
Got it. Was there a particular reason that you were looking for an education abroad?
Okay, to be very honest with that, I think there was no alternative. Like that decision was sort of made for me.
Got it.
Like in 9th grade, my parents sent me to, they enrolled me in IGCSE. Then 11th grade was IB. So that decision was kind of made for me. And then, but now it's been very clear to me, like spending 4 years there, like the education is just so good. And like coming back also, I feel very empowered with the education and obviously grateful for the education that I've got there.
Got it.
But yeah, the education is great.
Okay, that's amazing. All right, so speaking of Berkeley, it's one of the most competitive, academic environments around. Is it true that it's very academic in nature or is Berkeley more social than it sounds?
So it's a big school. You will find all sorts of people.
Okay.
You will find people who are extremely academic. You'll find people who are prodigies. You'll find people who are total degenerates. And you'll find people who are also like, in the middle somewhere, right?
Right.
So it's a big school and you choose your friend circle, peer group, whatever you want to call it. And then you just, end up becoming an average of your peer group. So that's what it is. That's what I thought it was at Berkeley as well. I was very academic when I was in school, but then at Berkeley, I joined a fraternity.
Okay.
And a fraternity is like really fun and, I had a great time there. I loved my fraternity.
Right.
But, being in Greek life and then being very academic and joining like the consulting clubs or joining or being part of, a student, like an academic group like IEEE or, you have your computer science societies and whatnot. It was very different. So depending on what sort of person you are, what sort of student you are, what you want out of college, because it's such a big school, you can find that.
Got it. That sounds absolutely amazing. So if you had to describe Berkeley and everything that it is, what would you say about it?
I would say it's an amazing school. It's a big school, everything that comes with being a big school. So you have to maybe put in a little more effort to get the resources you want.
Right.
But because it's Berkeley and because it's such a big school, all the resources are there. You just have to go the extra mile. Not even the extra mile, but just work a little harder to get them.
Got it. So pulling into exactly what we just talked about how big Berkeley really is.
Yeah.
Since it's such a huge school, I mean, at some point the resources have to cap out, right? So was it really that competitive to get opportunities and resources, or is it still feasible and possible?
No, it is. It's feasible and possible. I think what you have to realize is because it's such a big school, like not everyone really cares. Like let's say you want to meet a professor, right? Like if you want office hours with the professor.
Right.
And like 1,000 people are taking that class. Yeah, 1,000 people, big class. But out of the 1,900 of them wouldn't even care that I want office hours with the professor. Perhaps 100 would. And yeah, you're probably not going to get an hour with the professor. You'll get half an hour. But you get it. Like if you, they'll have like their whatever scheduling website that they have. You have to book a slot and then you can meet the professor.
But the structure is in there.
Of course. And it's there. And like, I think like they're very self-aware that they're a big school.
Okay.
So even, they've got like professor, then they've got teaching assistants. So they've got, head TAs, then teaching assistants, and then their students. And so like, obviously like the budgeting, the funding of the classes, of the resources, they're all done in accordance with, hey, how big the school is. Obviously, like it's not as abundant as, some of the private schools in the US. But I would say like if you want resources, you can find them.
That sounds really, really good.
Yeah.
What sort of people would you say thrived the most in your experience in an environment like this?
I think, like I said, I know like a lot of people at Berkeley who just, want to have a great 4 years at college. Like they don't care about, doing very well in their classes or getting a great job.
Interesting.
It's just that,
Does Berkeley really have a crowd like that?
Of course it does. Like there's Greek life. So Greek life, a lot of people, they just want to have a good time, 4 years of college, get a good enough job and, move on with life.
And would they still get a good enough job if they just, say, coasted through college?
Yeah, I think if you do, average, I think you could get a good job. It's a good school. So average at Berkeley is not average in the US.
Right.
So it's a good school. You get a good enough job, but obviously if you're, hyper competitive, hyper ambitious, you have to work a little harder. But yeah, you could totally coast through college and, do well, I think.
Interesting.
I just don't see a reason to be very competitive in for a lot of students. Like it's not what you're seeking, then why be so?
Okay. Got it. So generally speaking of it being a huge school, was networking something that, was an option or was something that was prevalent in the school or something that, you engaged in or a lot of people engaged in?
I think they did. So networking was big.
And was that useful?
Yeah, so let me give some context there.
Okay.
So consulting clubs, they're like, clubs on campus. They're consulting clubs, they're business clubs, they're finance clubs, whatnot.
Right.
And all these clubs have, networking events. So they'll call people from, the industry, they'll have networking amongst the students of the clubs and whatnot.
That's amazing.
So it's very helpful in those cases. But I think there also, like if you're looking for a job, finding a job at a networking event, you might land a job, but the odds are very low. Because if you want to find a job and you're, doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, it gets a bit hard. So you have to just go the extra mile. Maybe you met a person in a networking event, try to grab coffee with him after the event. It's again, networking, good starting point, but it's not the end all.
So also what it sounds like is networking on university time and then there's networking on your own time. Correct. And it sounds like networking on your own time seems to have a higher payoff.
I do think so. And like to add to that, I don't think you have to go to Berkeley to do networking on your own time. I think Berkeley allows you to do networking in environments that they organize, like the clubs organize or whatever, organizations organize. But I think what will, propel you forward is networking on your own time.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So considering the kind of school just Berkeley is, the kind of place Berkeley is situated in, what sort of stereotypes existed about Berkeley? And were they true?
The big stereotype is it's a very liberal school, right? Like so many protests going on all the time, very liberal school, whatnot. Dude, it's true.
Okay.
So there are protests, but then again, like, if you want to be involved in those protests, you be involved. If you don't, you just walk past it.
So you do have a choice to be not politically active and still thrive in that environment?
100%. It's a big school. That's the best part. Like that's what I love about big schools so much, or what I love about Berkeley so much, is because it's so big, you can actually choose who you want to be.
Right.
Like in my, in my first year, I was kind of like, I wanted to explore a bit. So that's why I joined this fraternity. But towards the end of college, I wanted to focus on my academics, on my, career a little bit. So that's when I started networking, started taking my studies. I became a lab assistant for a linear algebra class. I started doing research and whatnot. So it's like, you can choose who you want to be. And I love that about Berkeley.
Got it. Is there anything that unifies the Berkeley crowd in one thread, even though it's that big? Like, is there a typical situation to a Berkeley student?
Not at the top of my head, but yeah, I think people are liberal.
Okay.
And even if they're not liberal, I think they start respecting the liberal perspective.
Okay.
So that happens.
Okay.
So yeah, unifying thread would probably be, woke.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, another thing about Berkeley is that what being situated in California and generally being such a place for such a tech hub as well, it's very diverse, right? So, what's that actually like on campus? What's the diversity like to experience? Is that something that actually makes the social scene, that much better?
I think it does. I think diversity, it is very diverse, you're right. And diversity really helps because you have people coming from all parts of the world, different parts of the US as well, and they also have different experiences, different backgrounds growing up. So diversity really helps. Like it helps you, especially make that transition. Like when I was moving from India to the US, like, having a group of friends from India and then having, people I could just relate to made that a lot easier.
Right. As an Indian student going to a place where there's that many Indian students, did that make it easier?
Yes, it did. So, of course it did. So, in my first semester, it really helped. But even in the long term, because, you meet people, like such a breadth of people, you also start respecting perspectives or like respecting diversity a lot more.
Right.
So I think that's the benefit of a big school and a big, very diverse school, is that you just learn so much from the different backgrounds of people, which is a very intangible learning compared to like what you learn in your classes, but very valuable for me, I think.
Got it. And are there any tips to how to find your people better, or, what do you really have to do to make sure that you actually find your people and get to meet the right people?
I think you should know what you want out of college.
Okay.
I think that's like the most important.
And the clubs facilitate the rest of it.
I think like the clubs do a very good job at marketing themselves. So do the frats, because the frats also want, like-minded people to join those organizations. The club also want like-minded people to join those clubs. And similarly, even for the CS society, they would want, smart CS kids to join.
Right.
You should know what you want. Like you shouldn't be someone who's extremely academic and just because you want to, attend a lot of social events, you join a fraternity. So you need to know exactly what you want. And if you, not exactly, but you need to have a sense of what you want. And if you know that, you'll find an appropriate, club or organization or friend circle or peer group, whatever.
Got it. You've mentioned the frat culture. So what is the frat culture really like at Berkeley?
So it was very helpful for me because in my second semester, that's when I joined the fraternity. And it's nice because, you have so many people from, again, different backgrounds who are you're pledging a fraternity. And I learned so much about the culture from all of them. So very good for me. But it's nice, we have social events once in a while. You get to meet people from other frats. It's just, right when college starts, you already have a really good friend circle.
Okay.
So it's like, you're in school, you're like really good friends with everyone in school. And then you go to college and you don't know anyone over there. So when you join a frat, it's exactly how you feel like when you were in school. So it's like you have like, really good friends all over
again. It. Okay. So what is it like to be in a class with 2,000 students? I don't think Indian students in general would relate to that concept because it's 2,000 students that you have a class with. It's just not a concept that you see until college. So what is that actually like?
Yeah, so the intro classes in CS, like the first couple, they'll have 2,000 students. It was a bit weird for me.
Because that's worse than a conference or a seminar or any of those things, right?
It's kind of like a conference, there are like 1,000 people in an auditorium which is fully it's fully booked out.
And it's just a class.
And one, professor there and a big screen behind him and presenting. So it's kind of surreal to see.
So about living situations, what are the living situations like? Are they good, bad, ugly?
They're fine. They're good.
Okay.
They're good. They're all right. So the dorms are really nice.
Okay.
There are a few dorms which are better than other dorms.
Right.
I was in a dorm that was not so good.
Okay.
But some of the dorms are super nice.
Nice. Got it.
Yeah, but good overall. And then, your first year, you're in the dorms. Second, third, fourth year, you typically move out and you live off campus. And off campus, you pay for the apartment.
Right.
So you can get a really nice apartment and you can also not.
Right.
Yeah, but then
you have more freedom at that point.
Of course. Yeah, that's how it is.
Got it. So what about the whole food and just generally hangout situations? Any, favorite food spaces or just hangout spots?
Berkeley food cafeterias were not good. Like, I'm going to be honest, they were not good.
Okay.
But the food options off campus, very nice.
Okay.
So, you won't find a lot, like most people, they won't eat at the cafeterias, but they'd eat at the, there's like...
the food joints.
And so the amazing thing about Berkeley is that you don't have, it's not very gentrified. So most of the shops, most of the restaurants also, they're all mom and pop stores. So it's also very, not culty, but it's also like, I like this a lot. So there's like an element of care involved.
Nice.
So I guess there was like this Indian place north side of campus very nice.
Okay, got it. And generally speaking, you guys did tend to stay mostly on campus, considering it's not, smack dab in the middle of somewhere. Did you guys travel out of campus very often, or was most of the crowd just within the campus for the most part?
So Berkeley is very close to San Francisco.
Yeah.
So, once a month or once in 2 months, you end up going to the city.
Okay.
So you experience San Francisco, and also in California, 2 hours up, you have Tahoe, which is where people go to ski.
Yeah.
And then you can also go to LA, which is half an hour flight, or it's a short drive. So a lot of Berkeley students do that. So they're during semester, they'll make trips. So it's definitely a lot of fun because it's California. There's just so much to do.
Absolutely.
But when you're at Berkeley and you have classes and all of that is going on, then you're just on campus.
Right. And because you were so close to San Francisco, was getting internships any easier?
I think it is. I think it 100% is. Obviously, one, because you have exposure.
Right.
Because, you have so many companies also visiting Berkeley, and they're able to visit Berkeley so easily because it's so close for them. So exposure is definitely there. But I think also, like, from a monetary lens, even these companies that are based out of the Bay Area, they want to hire students who are in the Bay Area. Because they don't want to pay for their relocation and do all of this stuff. They might as well, hey, like Berkeley feeder school, Stanford feeder school.
Right.
We'll just take students from here.
Right.
Obviously, like, that's not the same for all companies, but a lot of the startups, especially, they would hire folks, if they're based out of California, they were based out of San Francisco. Huge advantage.
Gotcha.
So they would want to hire students from Berkeley. They would want to hire students from Stanford.
Got it.
So that's a very clear advantage.
Got it.
Being in Berkeley.
And as a part of the UCs,
Correct.
did you guys regularly engage with the other UCs in any ways? Any engagement, structured engagement in any way?
No, I don't think there is. So not a lot of structured engagement. I think there are, football games once in a while. So you might end up going to other campuses to watch Berkeley playing, or they might come to yours.
Got it.
But there's really no structured engagement.
And what's the sports scene in general like?
It's a bit isolated, in my opinion. So like the people who are very academic, they don't care much for the sports.
Right.
Very much unlike Duke, right? Unlike Duke, where like everyone, there's a big sports culture.
Huge.
Every student is somewhat involved in it.
Yeah. Like even if you're not playing, you're watching.
Exactly, you're watching. Or you're like very supportive and you know who the players are and all that.
Absolutely.
I don't think that was the case, at least for me at Berkeley.
Okay.
The students who are academic, they're very academic. Students who are student athletes or just athletes, they're like, or student athletes.
Completely separate groups.
Completely separate. And they're in different dorms as well. So even like the interaction is very limited.
Okay. Yeah. So then that's definitely disparate. And were there any school rivalries?
Yeah, Berkeley, Stanford.
And how is that? What was the experience like?
I think, it's there. It's
how much is there?
When football games happen, it definitely appears.
Sure.
But otherwise, I don't think people care.
So
that
it's
much.
not a strong.
No, not
rivalry.
really. But during football games, it is strong. People get very excited. I think that's when you actually see the rivalry.
Okay.
But otherwise, people don't care.
Like Berkeley seems like an island of itself, a very big island because it's a huge number of students. But Berkeley doesn't then seem to be a school that is very interactive with even the other UCs or other schools in the area.
I think that's just the case for even other UCs. Like if you go to UC San Diego, it's not like, they'd be making efforts to interact with other UCs as well. So I think that's just the case with UCs in general. And then in terms of it being an island, it is. I mean, it's not in San Francisco. It's not in a city. It is a college town, Berkeley.
Right.
But, there are events. Like, if a company is hosting an event in the city, then you'll have students, if it's a CS event or like a software engineering networking event or whatever, like you'll have students from Stanford and Berkeley both attending that event.
Right.
So you have chances of interaction, just not centrally organized by Stanford or
Got it.
Or Berkeley. Although I should mention, I was in a research lab, the cognitive neuroanatomy lab at Berkeley, and we used to engage with the professor at Stanford a lot.
Okay.
So there was a lot of symbiosis over there, and I think this happens at the research level, and this happens across colleges. Like you could be a professor at Berkeley and you could be collaborating with a professor at University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And as a result of a person working with that research, you also get that.
Correct. So I got that exposure too, but yeah, not very direct, not very much at the undergraduate
not common or generic level engagement.
Correct.
So speaking of academics at Berkeley, what was the curriculum system like? Was there enough freedom? How exactly does the curriculum at Berkeley function?
So it depends on the major you have. So if you're in the College of Letters and Sciences, so there you have a lot of freedom. You can take virtually any class, which is, you can take any class. I think you have enough time and flexibility. You also take any class.
Right.
But if you're, in the engineering college, then you're pretty constrained because there's you have more requirements, you have more classes to take, you have,
Right.
math, physics, chemistry. I had to EE, electrical engineering electives, I had to take computer science electives. So I got a bit squeezed. But, like folks who were in the College of Letters and Sciences, they could take a plethora of classes that, I didn't have the opportunity to take.
Got it.
So that's one. And then two is, because it's such a big school, the really popular classes get booked out very fast.
Okay.
So they will actually, to preserve the quality of education, because they want it to be a small class, they'll cap it at like 200 students, and there would be,
Okay.
1,000 students who will be willing to take the class.
Okay.
So that all happens on a first come, first serve basis.
Interesting.
So yeah, that is a point to note.
So then generally freedom seems to be something that's like not there at all, but
Yeah.
it's also there in a constrained manner in general, also considering that you cannot swap up your major out at Berkeley later.
Okay, again, so you can. So if you're in the College of Letters and Sciences, you can swap your major within
Between
that
the-
college.
yeah.
Within that college, but from going from College of Letters and Sciences to College of Engineering, that's tough.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Again, I think, yes, it is constrained, but yeah,
But it's there.
It's there. It's there. You can get it if you want it. You can write to the professor. You can request your advisor that, hey, I really want to take this class.
Right.
So again, like you can go the extra mile and really figure
Right.
it out, but you do have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Got it. Diving into your professional trajectory from Berkeley, how did Berkeley prepare you for the journey that you took on? You decided to jump into entrepreneurship pretty early after college. How did Berkeley prepare you or put you in that path?
I think I wanted to do something, my own thing, before Berkeley, frankly.
Okay.
But I think Berkeley was great because there were so many people already who dropped out, who were already doing their own thing while at college.
Right.
So I didn't feel very peer pressure to, only apply to a job. And
Right.
like I felt very comfortable to dabble, with something entrepreneurial in my own time.
Got it.
I did work a job 1 year after college, but, I quit that job, I think 12 months in, went full time on Paasa. But I think Berkeley really helped in the sense that, you've seen other people do it. It's very helpful.
Right. And generally, was the environment conducive to a person, say, who wants to dabble in entrepreneurship? Was there enough support on an institutional level?
So there are clubs. So there are like, entrepreneurship clubs or, startup clubs as well now.
Right.
I wasn't in any of them.
Okay.
But I think, there are VCs who would visit college once in a while. So you had
interesting.
the opportunities to network.
Interesting.
In fact, Y Combinator visited Berkeley just a week ago. So, they do that as well.
That's great.
So I think you do have the opportunities, but more so you have the exposure. I think exposure is more important than the opportunities because exposure really tells you that, hey, you can actually do this. It's
Right.
like, the same way you'd have like a top finance institution visiting Wharton and then
Right.
like inspiring all the children that, hey, you can
Right.
work this high finance job. It's the
Right.
same idea. So a VC or like a founder could come, give a talk in a, a startup class or, an event which is organized. So that exposure is very important for me. That, people have done this. These people are incredibly inspiring.
Got
I
it.
am like, 10 miles away from San Francisco, 30 miles away from Palo Alto.
Right.
So that to me was extremely inspiring. That, these
Got it.
people live very close to me. They've done all of this. Maybe I can try.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool. And how's the alumni network for a school that has that many graduates every single year?
Yeah.
Was the alumni network anything that you could depend on or something that came in handy ever?
It did, right? I think like, when you reach out to someone, even though it's big and it might not be as tight knit as other colleges, but if
Right.
someone has gone to Berkeley and, you reach out to them on LinkedIn or cold email them and
Right.
you have like you're signing off with Go Bears. I think
Right.
it does matter a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That's interesting to know because smaller colleges usually do have a
Yeah, they were
very
very-
tight-knit
Correct.
alumni base.
Ours might not be as tight knit. Like some people wouldn't care that, you went to Berkeley. But then I would say, if, 50% of the people would. And then it really helps because there's so many people.
Right.
So if you have 50% of so many people caring, I think that's
right. That's
the
still a
absolute
huge
is
number.
huge.
Absolute number is still huge.
Yeah.
Yep, that's absolutely fair. Okay,
Yeah.
so considering the time you spent at Berkeley and everything you did, is there anything you regret, anything that you would do differently if you could
Yeah.
go back?
I think knowing what I wanted out of college was very important. Like,
Okay.
I was extremely academic for a part of college, then I wasn't. And then figuring
Okay.
out what I wanted, because there was a part where towards the end, I also wanted to start up and do my own thing.
Right.
So I was really being pulled in different directions. And that was just a function of me not knowing what I wanted out of college. To anyone, like I tell this to my younger brother as well.
Okay.
Like if you're going to college and you know, you want to have a good time at college,
Right.
then don't kill yourself over academics. And if you want to, get a PhD, then do very well at academics and don't worry if your friends are partying every Sunday. Right? I think this is true for small colleges and big colleges. But there are different types of people and everyone has their own priorities.
Right.
So you don't want to get affected by other people's priorities. So if I wish I knew very clearly that, hey, Nitish wants to start up.
Okay.
So from year 1 to year 4, my priority should have been that.
Right.
Instead of being like, okay, fraternity, classes, teaching assistant, lab work,
right,
and then startup. I think,
right,
this is all in hindsight. I think all of those things helped me.
Because that's college for you.
Of course, all of those things helped me. This is very stupid of me to say that, that wasn't good, this is good. But I think it was just given me, made me a little more happy, given me a little more clarity if I knew what I wanted.
Got it.
But I think having a breadth of experience is very important.
Interesting.
Correct.
Okay, got it. And anything who wants to try and apply to Berkeley, any advice for them? Anything that they don't know because, they don't exactly put on the website, but something that knowing might help decide if they want to attend Berkeley or might improve their chances of getting in?
I think authenticity is very important.
Okay.
Because it's a big school and, people from very different perspectives.
Right.
So I think being respectful and authentic is something I would assume that they value a lot.
Okay.
So that would be my advice.
Got it. I think that's more or less everything we had to ask you today.
Thank you.
And that was a very fun episode with Mr. Nitish. He has told us so much about UC Berkeley that now you guys know. So make of the information what you will, make the best use of it. Find out whether this college is actually your fit, right? Actually explore whether whatever this college has within its identity is actually a good fit for what you want out of your college experience. And as Mr. Nitish said, knowing what you want can absolutely change the whole college experience for you. So think about that. And if you found this video helpful, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Mr. Nitish.
Thank you.